Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Colin. A great episode. So much stuff went down. We got to break it down bit by bit. First of all, let's talk about the fact is, Will told Katie everything. But we also got to note, he did not tell Katie about Bram. Because eventually, because it's kind of interesting. Like, for one, learning about everything. For one, she learns about Broussard because it's like, wait, Broussard's in town. He went to you. He didn't come to me, which is later on you kind of understand more so why. Because it's like her, like it's like we team Resistance LA OGs, and you went to my husband first before you went to me. It's like you worked with me before you worked with my husband. There's that whole thing. But also for her, it's like, no, we're friends, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. But obviously, like Will, he didn't think she wanted to. Because she thought this place was a good place, so she didn't really want to neither one of them kind of wanted to mess this up for them because they believed that this is a place that she wanted to be. But for her, it's like she only wanted to be here because she thought it was safe. So we kind of break a few other things there. But the point I was trying to make is he didn't tell her about Bram, which later on that kind of comes up, and he's like, no, let's keep Bram out of it. Because I think the thing is he's too embarrassed to admit, like he's too shamed of himself because of him being in the situation he is. He dragged his own son into this whole situation, and I thought it was kind of pretty nice of him explaining what the whole deal was, because for him it's like he kept moving, because as long as he kept moving, pushing forward, he never had to worry about dealing with his pain and his sorrow. But that moment, being there in that moment, it made him kind of pause, and obviously talking to Snyder about it made him kind of inadvertently confront his own, because even Will doesn't 100% know about what happened, so he can't really 100% blame Snyder. But for him, it doesn't matter at this point in time, which, to be fair, once again, it is Snyder's fault, no matter how much you wanted to twist it last episode, because that's the thing. Even if Snyder says one thing, it could easily be another thing. That's just Snyder in general. Obviously, we discussed that, immensely last episode, but nevertheless, but Bram walking in on him too just kind of made it too much, because it's like he already lost one son. He doesn't want to damage another son just because he's damaged, and he regrets that decision. And I think he's scared to tell Katie the truth because she'll be pissed. Because for him, it's like what he's doing. For him, it's like what happened to Charlie will stay with all of us forever. It will always be a part of us. But I can't make it everything, because if I do, it's going to drag you and the kids down, and I can't have that. So I've kind of essentially he's got to get his shit together. So this episode, we do see that him kind of doing that. And I do like that, Amy's kind of like, no, I'm not going to be part of some team if Will's going to be a part of it. But Broussard is like, I need him and I owe him. And it's even Will's kind of like, wait, why are you here then if that's the case? Because he's like, yeah, she's not ready yet. So it's like they could have brought Amy along, but Broussard wanted to be there instead because he didn't want to leave her. Because even he notices that Will's been messing up. But for him, it's like Will's a professional. He's done this type of thing. He might be messing up. But if someone's there by my side, me, at the very least, if I get her, I get her. He actually legitimately cares about Amy, which is kind of interesting. Which is something Will kind of talks about later on when he actually goes to talk to Amy. He kind of opens up to her about everything, which is interesting. He actually kind of brings up the whole Bram situation. Once again, something he has not told Katie, which I find so fascinating. But, Amy's talking about, getting him, he should get professional help, which he's kind of like, yeah, I'll deal with things in my own way. Leave that to kind of me to be dealt with. But it's like, I don't know, man. You haven't really been dealing with it now. I don't think that's something you can necessarily deal with on your own. To be fair, Katie's handling it better than him. But, who's to say that's true? Because I think it hits Will even harder, because for him, it's because he went to Santa Monica to get Charlie, he thought he had saved Charlie, and he, as a father, as trying to, the one who's in his mind is like, I'm meant to protect my family and I failed. That's why it hits him hard. Not trying, in no shape or form I'm trying to say it takes away from any of their griefs, whether it be Gracie's, Bram's, or Katie, but I think Will has extra layers of guilt upon himself for that, because the reason why Charlie was in Santa Monica in the first place is because he's like, I failed to pick him up on time, and that's why everything kind of went to shit, with their family, why they got separated. Because he even talked about it, was that season 1? I think he had talked about that, or was it I think it was season 1, where he's like, he felt like every time Katie looked at him, she blamed him for Charlie not being there, So, but what I thought was most interesting for him, it's like, yeah, when he was talking to Amy, he's like, don't let me be the reason you walk away. Broussard needs you. Which she's kind of like, no, Broussard is capable. He doesn't need anyone. But it's like, you're for him what my wife once was. And it's like a reason to keep fighting, which she's like, I'm not going to be his lucky charm. It's like, that's not what I'm talking about. So obviously, like, Katie was someone who kind of kept Broussard a little grounded, reminded him like, oh yeah, like this isn't just his fight, that there are other people involved, all fighting, got their own reasons. And so also I think it's a layer of like, because he cared about Katie. And I think that's what, I'm pretty sure that's what Will was trying to imply. I don't know whether he's just talking about like, I know, because you can obviously tell Amy is important to him. Once again, it's like, that's why he didn't want her involved in this whole situation. Like, it's like, yeah, you can be a part of this, but he wanted Will out there before her because she hasn't had the training yet. Will's at least got all the experience prior to this whole situation. In her case, in Amy's case, she was a doctor, so she doesn't really have like the tactics and training that him and Will does. So he doesn't want to put her out in the field because it's like, because it's also, Will also brings up, it's like, who are all the other people that were a part of the resistance? They were a bunch of kids and they all got killed, and Broussard took that upon himself. At the very least, if someone like, well, Will is kind of like, yeah, like if I'm like, Broussard's probably thinking like, yeah, I probably want to catch a bullet anyway, just because, which is kind of super sad and depressing for him to say, but nevertheless, it's like, yeah, like I'm at the very least, Will's a capable person, so anything that happens to him is going to be on him. But if anything happened to Amy, Broussard would blame himself because it's like, oh, I'm bringing another rookie out here. At the very least, in Katie's department, it's like he trained Katie, taught her how to use the gun and everything. So he trusts in her. But like Amy, like once again, like I think over that time he's developed feelings for her. I mean, to be fair, like this is the closest he's gotten to anyone in a very, very long time. The last person he got this close to was Katie. So I think that speaks volumes. And I think Amy kind of realizes what he's trying to talk about, which is kind of interesting. If that is the case, like not just caring about her might be potentially like, not just like, oh, you're my partner and I care about you, more like you're my partner and I have feelings for you in like a like type of, or love type of situation. But that's how I'm interpreting it, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see what Amy ultimately decides to do in the end. We never got to see her decision. And like I said, also, I'm curious to see what happens with Will too, like his trying to handle things on his own. I think honestly he will be slightly okay when it comes to everything because he's no longer doing this alone. He has Katie by his side, which is very interesting because I think Katie will bring balance to him. Like at the very least they're working together. Sadly, this does kind of create a problem at home because like Bram already has issues with, you know, Will, because Will's just kind of been in the spiral he's been in and just the family's just been out of whack. That's why he's like, oh, let me step up and take care of my sister because my parents aren't, you know, they're so caught up in all of this that they didn't really check in on Bram or Gracie, which Bram kind of takes that into his own hands. So for him, it's kind of like, even though they didn't want this to be the case, they have kind of pushed Bram to kind of be more of a grown-up than he is because he's still a teenager. Let's not forget it. Like at most, Bram is 18, maybe 19, because I'm pretty sure he's like 17 at the beginning of the series. So after all the time skipping around, he's like maybe at most maybe 19, but I'm thinking he's still like 18. That's still a lot to put a kid, like a teenager, young adult, into these circumstances. A lot of responsibility because he's the one that kind of has to pick up his family while his family's gotten in a broken mess that they kind of are. So he has to kind of take responsibility for Gracie. Hence why he's doing this whole like patrol job so he can get a place and kind of get away from his parents because they got their own shit to deal with, and he doesn't want Gracie to be around that. Like once again, Will inadvertently is kind of what Amy talked about, like dragging his family down with him, and it's kind of already happening, and Bram is kind of pulling away because of that, you know. So I'm very interested to see whether that turns into something or not, especially because Bram has found a home and a family. Or to be fair, he doesn't know about what's really going on, that Seattle isn't really as safe. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen when that does happen, because that means it's going to uproot his life. His life has kind of been uprooted more than once, you know. It's like, oh, you know, at the end of season 1, he got uprooted. He got back and things went down the way it did in season 2. He got uprooted, you know. So honestly, his life hasn't been consistent in a very long time. It's just there's always something coming, something happening. So he's really happy here. Gracie's happy here, but it's like that might change in the future. Like I said, we'll see. It's going to be interesting when he kind of has a finally talk with his parents, and then it'll probably come out about what Will's hiding from Katie. So we'll see. I don't know why, like, once again, there's always that part of my brain that's a little suspicious about his girlfriend's family situation. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just suspicious of her. I don't know why, but it's probably that's what the storyline is going to be. Maybe it'll turn out to be something else, kind of like maybe my suspicions are right about there being something suspicious about, but maybe it's just going to be like, no, that's what that story is supposed to represent, like him kind of coinciding with a stable family unlike his own, which is super unstable. Kind of been unstable for a while. It's been a whole thing. I mean, let's not forget his mom was lying to his dad the entire time. Like, his dad was working with the occupation, and then she was secretly working with the resistance. They were kind of against each other, so that's a complicated situation to be under that household, so it's a whole thing. But a lot of interesting things we ended up finding out in this episode that I thought was kind of interesting, at least like from Garland and Snyder's perspective. I thought was so fascinating because obviously they're researching this whole thing that Kynes is trying to keep hush hush about, like, oh yeah, that alloy that was being stolen, the murders and stuff like that. Like even Patrol is kind of being told like the hush hush. He has a special unit that investigate that, which now I'm kind of like, okay, that unit must be made of outliers, because that seems like it seems like it's setting up like Kynes has his own personal army of outliers. Because what we end up finding out, it's like from Snyder, is that all outliers are supposed to be put in those pods, no matter what the circumstances may be. Because even Snyder himself didn't know that Will was an outlier until now. Because obviously Will's always done a good job of kind of staying under the radar. But with Seattle, he came in through the front door because they knew exactly who he was. Something he brings up to Katie and stuff like that. So the question is then, like, so why is he still running around? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh, at least in Broussard's case, it's like, well, he snuck in thanks to Amy and stuff like that. But like, what about Will? It's like they've known who he was the entire time he's been living here, and they've done nothing about it. Kynes has just let him kind of run free. It turns out that Kynes made a deal, is at least what Snyder is kind of thinking, because it's like, he's supposed to have a certain number of outliers he gives in. He kind of has a quota. But I guess outside of that quota, if he brings in, he kind of skims a little off the top for his own personal use. For what particular reason? I don't know. We do know that the outliers are supposed to be like, at least what Will's kind of saying, like, we're the first line of defense against the enemy, which I was like, once again, I was like, what is that supposed to mean? I guess it is simply for the purpose of like, you guys are soldiers, you're well trained, you know the tactics, you can fight. So it isn't like they're necessarily going to do anything for you. I think they're just going to put you on cold storage long enough until they need you, and then it's like, oh, let's get to battle. They want to make sure they have their entire army ready, because the last thing they need is an army that might flake at any point in time. So that's why they don't want you just running around doing whatever you want to. It's like, no, they need to know exactly where you are and account for. I mean, to be fair, we have no idea how many outliers there are. I mean, there are outliers all over the place. There's all the pods all over the place. So there's that whole situation happening all over the world. But Seattle's situation just happens to be different because Kynes is keeping a few for itself. So I guess he's trying to create his own personal army. Like, he isn't trying to do a resistance thing on his own. Like, what is he up to? Having his personal army. That in itself is $1 million question that Snyder is trying to get answered, which I think is so fascinating, because Snyder has confirmed it by like the two people that Kynes has keeping an eye on him. It's like, oh, they turn out, one of them ended up being a outlier, and it's like, oh, most likely the other dude that's with him is an outlier. So it's like, who knows how many he has. So what is that? Because I love it when Snyder kind of asks questions about the robbery and stuff like that. Kynes has no choice but to kind of like admit stuff. It's like, yeah, because he knows that Snyder's trying to catch him in a lie, so he has to admit some of the stuff. Obviously, he doesn't tell everything. Even Snyder doesn't tell him everything, that he knows exactly what was stolen. He actually saw it firsthand, that whole situation. He even hid the fact is of what happened to him with Will and Broussard. But because Snyder wants to use that as kind of an advantageous situation of like, the resistance is here, but we'll kind of let them do their own thing, like make use of that situation, kind of like two birds with one stone, probably use them to kind of collide, take each other out potentially. So Snyder kind of still doing the conniving thing that he's doing. So, but the thing I find interesting, obviously Broussard, Katie, and Will met up with that other dude, O'Neill. Turns out he's an outlier too. He doesn't know about that. Then they hand him the list, which I love the fact is Katie got that list by blackmailing her friends. Like, yeah, oh, I didn't have access to get to that building where you said we're sending all those people. Obviously it had to be from you. Like, all I have to do is lie. It's like, it's like, oh, you're such a selfish person. It's like, yeah, this is about my family, but this is all about so much more too, because obviously Seattle's lying to people about what's happening. You might be able to try and turn a blind eye to it, but Katie, I mean, for one, this is Katie Bowman we're talking about. She was full on resistance before. So now that she knows shit is up in Seattle, she isn't going to turn the other way. Like, she's going to make sure her family's safe, but also look out for other people. Like, granted, her friend / coworker isn't going to do the same thing. So kind of blackmailing her, got what she needed, and she bounces. She's like, I promise you'll never have to deal with me again. So that's kind of interesting. That's probably going to come back to bite her in the ass. The fact that she downloaded a list, maybe it won't, but I just think they'll probably red flag it. Like, why the hell were you looking this up? You had no business looking up. So explain it to me, and maybe she'll rat Katie out that way. Who knows? We'll see. But because then I love what that does, because that kind of gives me more because I was looking at the beginning scene with the dude that works for Kynes and stuff like that. He's on the computer and stuff like that. It's like, okay, you guys are trying to make a move and stuff like that without Kynes knowing. I'm like, oh, what's that about? And then like the dude Kynes comes to him. He's like, oh yeah, so they're trying to rob army was like, wait, what? I was like, so what I'm trying to understand is, what I'm thinking is that him, at first I was like, okay, so is that trying to say like, oh, like he's like, oh, we gotta wait for, Kynes to let his guard down and we'll pick a more appropriate target. So it's kind of like, oh, I tell them what's up now. So they'll kind of like give him a bone so he doesn't realize what we're doing, kind of get him looking over here while we're trying to actually plan for something. Like, that's what I was thinking, but it seems like, no, that's not the case. Like, it seems like he's the one that's in the know, potentially, because he knows exactly who he is. Like, he knows what his situation is. Obviously, everyone else, at least that dude in particular, didn't know what was up. I'm guessing everyone at that gym is most likely an outlier, but I guess he's kind of like the dude that works for Kynes. That dude is an outlier who knows what's up. Not everyone else does. So they probably think of like, oh, we're some kind of resistance people. Like, obviously, like I said, it's hard to, like, I think that's what F's kind of implying. Like, that not everyone in that group is on know and know about what's up. That he's playing them because he's making it seem like, oh yeah, I'm close to Kynes, so we can kind of like run things our own way, stealing the weapons and stuff like that. But it's like, no, like, it's something else entirely, that they're just kind of thinking everything's going one way, but really they're just being used unbeknownst to them, because once again, they don't know that they're outliers. That's, like I said, it's just a confusing situation. I think it's that they're kind of in the dark except for that dude, but we'll have to wait and see, because Will gets to notice to like, I'll go to Jim, which is interesting because that dude might know about Will, but they don't know about him being known about being an outlier. So we'll have to wait and see what that ends up turning out to be, in the long run. Like I said, overall, like a great episode with a lot of the stuff we discovered in this episode. I'm fascinated to see like how this will all turn out going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.